Have you ever heard of a story so strange it makes you question everything you thought you knew about life and death? Well, let me tell you one that happened in my own family. This is a story of my two maternal aunties, Hawa and Maimuna, who tragically passed away years ago. They were hard-working market women who made a living buying cereals like maize, millet, sorghum from rural farmers and reselling them at our local market. Both were incredibly successful, known for their determination and resilience. Everything changed on a Friday. What happened is something I will never forget. That day, they had traveled to one of the villages to buy their goods. After loading their cereals onto a truck, they couldn't find a ride back home. It was getting late, and instead of staying overnight in the village, they decided to ride in the back of the truck with their goods. It was a decision that cost them their lives. The truck had an accident on the rough, uneven roads of Togo, and neither of them survived. The impact was so severe that their bodies were found buried beneath the bags of cereals they had bought, as though they had been swallowed by the very goods they worked so hard for. It was a terrible, haunting scene that devastated our family. One of my aunties, Hawa, had traveled with her 1-year-old daughter. Tragically, the baby also passed away in the crash. Both left behind young daughters, and our families was thrown into deep grief. But here is where it gets truly mysterious. Exactly a month after the funeral, something happened that none of us could explain. My grandparents had a neighbor who had been away in Ivory Coast during the time of the accident and the funeral. He was completely unaware of what had happened to our family. This was back in the days before cell phones were common in Africa. Communication wasn't easy. If you weren't wealthy, you didn't have access to mobile phones. News of a tragedy like this wouldn't travel fast, especially across countries. When the man came to visit that afternoon, it was a normal, friendly visit. He greeted everyone warmly, caught up on general news, and the topic of death or mourning simply didn't come up. Maybe my family didn't want to bring up the pain of the loss in casual conversation, or perhaps they assumed he already knew. After some time, the neighbor got up to leave, but just as he reached the door, he suddenly turned back. "Ah, j'ai presque oublié," he said casually. "J'ai vu Hawa et Maimouna à la gare routière en revenant de la Côte d'Ivoire. Elles étaient assises ensemble, elles m'ont demandé de vous saluer. Et elles ont aussi dit, prenez soin de leur fille." The room went silent. Everyone stared at him stunned. My grandparents exchanged looks of disbelief, and one of my aunties finally managed to say, "What do you mean? How Maimouna passed away 2 months ago?" The neighbor froze. "Quoi? Qu'est-ce que vous dites?" He replied, "Je les ai vues il y a quelques jours à peine, hein? Elles étaient vivantes, assises à la gare routière. J'ai même parlé avec elles." The air turned heavy. The neighbor described them perfectly, especially what they were wearing that day. He was adamant that it was them. From that day, this story became a mystery in our family. Some believed it was their spirits reaching out to ensure their daughters would be cared for. Others thought it was just a strange coincidence. But deep down, none of us could explain how he described them so perfectly. As I grew older, I started noticing similar stories shared online, cases of people who have passed away being seen in other places or countries after their death. It was the kind of thing that makes you wonder, how much do we really know about life and death? Life is mysterious. So this channel It's my way of exploring this mystery, starting with my own family. And there is more. One of my cousins shared another story about someone, a neighbor, reappearing in another country after their death. If you like to hear that one, let me know in the comments.